record this for posterity. I'm not sure whose posterity, but someone's. Um, Hi, everyone. Welcome to Metadata Mondays. This edition, the last Monday in March, is CSI Metadata Edition.
That's crime scene investigation.
Yes, because bad metadata can cause a massive crime scene in your bank account, and we want to try to help you fix that situation. I'm Renee Meredith. You guys have seen me quite a bit this year from Exploration Group, and we do this kind of metadata forensics all the time, and for our clients, and sometimes, if we really love you, we'll just do it on the side to help you out. So you should always reach out. And you can always feel like you should always feel like you can reach out to me if you have questions about metadata or what's going on, things like that, because we're always here to help. And I love helping people. With me, as always, the Garth to my Wayne is Catherine. Catherine.
Hello. I am Catherine Wood, and I don't have the participants open, but I'm sure I know many of you, and it's nice to see you. Planet Wood Studios, producer, engineer, composer, singer, songwriter, blah blah blah, and also a self-publishing person, and also manage clients that work with Renee. So we have lots of interface.
Yes, Catherine and I work together a lot on a lot of various and sundry projects, which some of you just don't know what I know about. But anyway, so here's an overview of what we're going to cover. This is, it can be a pretty stale topic, right? Metadata forensics, what does that mean? Some people call it income tracking. But from our perspective, it's your money, you haven't gotten the money from a use, or the money flow has stopped from a source, and you're trying to figure out what happened and work. And the best way to do that is to work backward until you find where the blockage is in the Suez Canal, for example. Something's happened, the flow of money has stopped, or it hasn't started. You got to figure out what went wrong. So, like I said, we do this a lot. Catherine and I are going to present some different scenarios. Some of these are actual questions that I've gotten from my clients. Some of them we kind of tailored the question to fit this. But there's a lot to cover, and we want to give you as much information as we possibly can. So we're going to be sticking with just the music publishing side for this panel and not dig into masters, because that's a whole lot more information, and we feel like the tools that we use here can be used across both publishing and masters. And we're also going to be sticking with US sources of income. And again, hopefully some of these same thought processes and ideas will work across international income as well. So, Catherine, I think it's time for us to introduce our alter egos who will be presenting this information to everyone.
Yes. So put our thinking caps on.
Put our thinking caps on.
And maybe we should get our smagnifying glasses.
Our smagnifying glasses. We have our smagnifying glasses to investigate these kinds of situations. We like to keep this fun because it can be a pretty dry topic. So we're hoping that you find us funny and find it a little bit more interesting the way that we present it. So, okay, guys. Bob Watson.
Hello.
Hello.
Our first scenario?
Yeah, what is our first scenario?
Yes, please hold. Scenario 1. Bob from Ohio wrote in and asks, I've been getting a lot of radio play on WKRP.
Oh, my favorite radio station.
Mine too. And my song is on the top 40 Billboard chart. I've gotten royalties from ASCAP, but shouldn't I be seeing some income from Harry Fox?
That is an Excellent, excellent scenario and question. Bob, I hear you. Um, so for your radio and your broadcast radio and your satellite radio, the answer is no. You wouldn't be seeing mechanical earnings from HFA previously and from right now the MLC. You're only going to see performance royalties from your PRO. Now, if your song is really big enough to be in top 40 Billboard charts, you're gonna still want to make sure, because you're gonna see income, mechanical income, um, not from broadcast or from satellite radio, but you will see mechanical income surely from Spotify or Pandora or other places where mechanical royalties would occur if your song is that big. So make sure you clarify the other platforms as well.
Yes.
Yes. Bob, do you have any commentary on that, Watson?
Um, my only commentary would be talking about the Harry Fox versus MRI, and why potentially, if we're talking about Spotify, for instance, why is there an important differentiating factor between the two?
Uh, well, yes, there is an important differentiating factor. A lot of people have come to us and asked, specifically, well, I don't have to keep track of HFA anymore now that the MLC exists. And I don't have to keep track at Music Reports anymore because the MLC exists. And that's a false thought process. Don't get stuck in that mindset. That's a false one, because the MLC is covering the DSPs for interactive streaming and a few other sources, but your bundled rights, your DSPs, which use multiple licenses together, like Facebook, TikTok, Peloton, Vendor Play, all of those types of things are blanket licenses, which are still administered by Music Reports or Harry Fox. And I think we have a scenario where we'll get into that later, but it's good you brought that up because I like to mention that fact quite a bit.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we move on to scenario number 2?
Sure.
Scenario number 2. Roberta from Colorado writes in, for many years, I have been receiving my royalties from BMI. The last 2 quarters, I haven't received any payment from them. What do I do?
That's very interesting, Roberta. Um, so, the first thing I would do if I was going to investigate this problem, and the first thing that I always try to do is when I'm representing a writer or working with a writer, is to make sure everything that you can actually do has been done. So, you're going to want to log into your BMI account. You're going to want to make sure that they have an updated W-9 for you. You're going to want to make sure your bank info is correct, that nothing's happened there. Make sure your address is correct if you're receiving a physical check from them. You might have moved and forgot to update it, something like that. The next thing you're going to want to check is you're going to want to check your song list in your BMI account. Make sure all your songs are there and that everything looks exactly the way it's supposed to look, right? So once you know you've done everything that you can do, then the next step is to start to reach out for help. Because once you reach out to customer service and you start in that process, if you know everything is clean, then every time you talk to a person, you can reinforce, nope, I've checked that, it's good, this is good, this is good, this is good. You're going to probably have identified a very specific problem at that point, be it a problem with your account that you can't fix, or something's wrong with their system or their software. You're going to actually need help at that point. It would also be really good if you have a publishing administrator to reach out to your publisher and make sure that on their side, on the publishing side for the PRO, that all of that information is good for them as well. Because you never know where something may cause a hiccup. But if you've traced back through all the steps that you can actually look at and fix yourself and then call customer service, it's likely you'll be able to narrow down and identify the very specific problem that has occurred at that point to help you out. Anything to add, Watson?
No, I just wanted to say that making sure that metadata is in order is that the term clean, that
Mm-hmm.
it's clean. When people say they have clean metadata, it's been combed over and double checked and, no typos and whatnot.
Exactly. And check for duplicates because your co-writer could have entered a duplicate entry and for some reason the income has been shifted over to this duplicate entry that doesn't have your ownership on it for whatever reason. And it can happen with like a song titled The Other Side. Your co-writer could have uploaded Other Side. And for whatever reason, all of the checks and balances within the PROs to make sure those things stay together actually cause two separate entries. So that can also be a problem, is duplicate entries without both writers' information and both publishers' information together and safe and sound and secure. Yeah, those would be
Excellent.
the things that I check. Mm-hmm.
Excellent, Sherlock. Shall we do scenario 3?
I'm ready for scenario 3 if you are. And
Excellent.
please,
I am too.
oh, one thing
Oh, yes.
before we go forward, anyone who's attending this webinar, please feel free to go ahead and pop questions into the Q&A box. And we're kind of keeping an eye on it. And if a relative question comes up during a particular scenario, we'll hit it then. But mostly we're saving questions for the end. We hope to have a lot of time because we know that people have a lot of questions on this stuff. So, yeah, go ahead, Watson.
So, Sherlock, our scenario number 3. Babs from Alaska writes in, almost every time I get on my Peloton, I hear the song I co-wrote with that mega popular band. It's got to be playing on Pelotons all around the globe. But I haven't seen a dime of Peloton money. Why not?
That's a very, very interesting question. So the first thing to understand about something like Peloton, and this goes back to your question about MRI and HFA. Are they hanging out? Have they gone away? What's going on there? So the first thing to understand about Peloton is that there's two income sources, performance and mechanical. Performance is going to be through your PRO. So you'll want to do all the steps in reviewing your PRO information to see why money hasn't started flowing or why it stopped at a particular place in time in the process. It's called pipeline money, money in the pipeline. It's generated by a Peloton user on their bike, and it goes through a pipeline until it ends up in your bank account, in your hand. So you want to make sure that that pipeline stays clean so the money flows. So you want to find the point in the pipeline where it stopped. So for the PRO side, we've given you a few tips already. Check your personal information there, double check your publisher information there. If you're a self-published writer, check both sides of your PRO account for sure. And then also making sure your songs are registered, checking with your publisher if you have a publishing administrator. Have they seen any problems? Has the income stopped for them? Good communication with your publisher or publishing administrator is really, really key to keeping the entire pipeline clean and all your metadata clean. Now for the mechanical side on Peloton, Peloton's blanket license, because it's a bundled rights license, is through music reports. Now, did you know that you need to have your song with both music reports and HFA to make sure you're fully covered for all these types of platforms? I know a lot of songwriters who didn't know that. And you shouldn't be ashamed about that because there's so much information out there that it's hard to keep track and keep up to date with all of it. But you still need to make sure your catalog keeps getting updated. I've had some writers reach out to me and say, well, they just wash their hands of music reports because who needs it anymore? Because the MLC exists. You still need it. You still super, super need it. TikTok is through music reports. Facebook and Instagram, that blanket license is through Harry Fox. So those are two income sources that are very important, can be very important for songwriters. So you want to make sure that you keep everything up to date at Music Reports and Harry Fox. I can't emphasize it enough. So once you're going to want to sit with your publisher, and if you're a self-administered publisher, You want to check all the things at your music reports account, right? And then the reports are going to come from Peloton to Music Reports. Music Reports is going to match them with the information in their ownership database. And then they're going to pay out the money according to the ownership on the database. So they're going to pay out to your publisher. And it's the publisher's responsibility to make sure that the writer gets their mechanicals, right? If you're a self-published writer, you're going to be looking for the whole money so you can pay yourself as a writer, right? So you'll want to check the registrations and make sure the songs are there. You'll also, for Music Reports, they have an unmatched queue where you can go in and put your song title in and search for anything in their unmatched royalties in order to attach your share to it and make sure you get paid. So a lot of times we find probably the most common thing we find where writers can't get paid is updated info at their PRO because they moved and they forgot to change their address, or they need a new W-9, something like that. The second most common thing that I've seen from my side of things is where something has fallen into unmatched and you got to go in and find it. You got to go look all around for it and find it. And then you get it matched up. We're going to have the same process for the MLC. At some point, we're going to get to look at the queue for the MLC, the unmatched royalties, and get our hands on what piece is owed to our writers of that 400 plus $1 million that the DSPs paid through. It's going to be a lot of work, but hopefully we've all got some good people on our teams, a good publishing administrator, something like that can help us dig through all of this data and find unclaimed works. It's also really important to not be afraid to develop a really good relationship with your publisher. I can't emphasize it enough. The way that I see it, music publishers work for the songwriters, not the other way around. We used to live in a world where songwriters worked for publishing companies. We don't live in that world anymore. Publishers work for songwriters, and it's their job to make sure this stuff gets registered and administered properly. You have every right in the world to reach out to your publisher and ask the question, hey, I can't personally log in and look at HFA's portal. Are my songs registered properly? Can you do a printout? Let's just double check and confirm. I just want to cross check it. That is something that you as the writer have every right to do and every right to double check. So you should do it. And you should ask questions of your publisher or your publisher administrator until you feel like you have the answer fully for yourself. If you're a self-published writer, I would say, it's hard because you want to be creative. You want to write the next song. You probably want to write a really sad country song about this entire process. Probably really do. Because there's a sad country song in it. But it's important that if you have someone on your team, someone who's in your corner who does understand spreadsheets and likes looking at metadata and things like that, to show them like, hey, I need some help in understanding this, and walk through it. Because if the pipeline is clean, you're going to get paid. Yeah. I feel
Excellent.
like I talked a lot on that one, Watson. I think you need to talk a little bit.
Well, I was just going to say that it just highlights how important it is as a songwriter to really put your thinking cap on and get your magnifying glass when you need it, and don't be afraid to ask questions of your publisher, or reality check if you're doing self-publishing. The reality here is you need to know everything about metadata, period. Like if you are self-publishing, you have to know. It's a simple fact. If you want to get paid, it's mandatory.
Yeah.
So,
and a good publisher is going to take your question and they're going to try to answer it as best as they can, as quickly as they can. They're going to try. And if you got to follow up and that kind of thing, keep following up. I have never, ever, to my knowledge, ignored a question from one of my writers.
Because you're a good publisher.
I try. But that's my worst nightmare, is that there's some email sitting hidden, buried in my inbox, in my spam, from a writer who really needs an answer to that question and I've missed it somewhere. And I that should be the goal of every publisher, or one of the goals of every publisher. Clean metadata should be the ultimate goal for every music publisher, but a secondary goal should be to be able to answer clients' questions as quickly and as accurately and as fully as possible.
Well, I think this is a time of sharing information. Everybody in a way has to be an educator to some degree. I certainly, when people come into the studio, I feel it upon myself to make sure, especially if they're independent, ask questions, make sure they have at least a little bit of a clue, or so that their ship is getting pushed off with this song into the right direction. Shall we move on to scenario number 4?
Cool, yes. Scenario 4.
We have Bobby from New York writes, during the pandemic, I watched the movie Outbreak over and over again on TV. It's great because my song, Epic Contagion, was used in that film. Shouldn't I be seeing some royalties from the broadcast of this movie?
First of all, excellent choices in your life, Bobby, for that film and for that song.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's really catchy.
It is very catchy. It's a very catchy song. It's one of the catchiest songs on radio, is Epic Contagion.
Certainly the most catchy song I've ever written. Bobby's ever written.
True. And the truth is that from all your TV watching of this movie on television, you should be seeing some royalties from all of that use on TV. You should be seeing royalties from your PRO for broadcast TV and for services like Netflix for that film. Now, I'm assuming, Outbreak came out before the big whole Netflix originals. So there are some wiggle bits when you're looking at like a production paid for by Netflix. But for a film like Outbreak that was released by a major studio out into the wild in the movie theater, you absolutely, when it's played on Netflix, should be seeing some PRO royalties. If you're not seeing these royalties from your PRO, then you should follow some of the investigation steps that we've talked about to work backward until you find the clog in the pipeline. And one of the problems that can occur for films is if there hasn't been a cue sheet turned in. That can be a big problem when you're dealing with, big studio releases, independent films, that kind of thing. The cue sheet is incredibly helpful to the PRO. So your publisher should be able to get it. If you're a self-published writer, whomever did your license, whether it was a big production company or a little baby production company, they should have a cue sheet, and you have the right to ask for that cue sheet and turn it into the PRO yourself. I've done it before in the past for my clients, where we have to go like pound the pavement until we find the cue sheet so we can get it turned in and make sure that there's no reason the money shouldn't get paid through. The only other thing I'll say there is it's also possible that within the sync license, there could be some provision for future broadcasts or something like that. So you'll want to go back and check your sync license to see if there's any more actual licensing money that you would get. It's rare, but it could happen. And I know plenty of publishers who might negotiate something like that, especially if something's expected to be a huge, big film. I know I'd put it in a sync license if I thought it was going to be a huge, big film.
If there was, for instance, a buyout that had a carve out, for instance.
There could be a buyout, yes. So if you haven't received any PRO money at all for your film, that's definitely where you want to double check if there was a buyout in the license.
But there could be a carve out that you get your writer's share. So
there could be a carve out for performance, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So you always want to double check that. Have a good attorney friend, a good music lawyer friend, or just have some really smart music publishing friends
go over it with their magnifying glasses.
There's magnifying glass. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Hmm.
Shall we jump on scenario number 5?
Um, yes, because I just saw a couple questions pop in. Actually, there's
Oh,
one that applies right now. How do PRO survey, collect, distribute royalties for recurring streaming shows on streaming services? From Mr. Anonymous or Ms. Anonymous attendee. It's very good to see you here, Anonymous. I love it when you come to our shows. But it kind of depends on the PRO in terms of the schedule that they pay out. Hopefully, cue sheets have been turned in so that when any royalties from Netflix or Hulu come in, those platforms should be reporting how many times the film was watched, and probably in what, I'm not sure how much information comes through, but I would think at least territory information and how many times it was watched will be coming through. So you can definitely should inquire for more details from your PRO, because each of them is going to have their own payout schedule. And they're going to have their own sort of calculations, because I'm not 100% sure PRO to PRO. And this is me being honest. If I don't know the answer and I know I have to go find the answer somewhere, so this is me being honest. I'm not sure if Netflix and Hulu and those things are paying a blanket license or if they're paying on a per use license. But I will go find that out now that I have thought of that question.
also
Like,
every scenario is different. So, net, like
mhm.
all the moving parts are different. There's no one size fits all.
Especially for film and TV. They're, you can get close, but it's not totally the perfect fit. But yeah. Scenario 5.
Scenario 5.
Yes.
Bobette, a self-published songwriter from Florida, writes in,
Yes.
I haven't gotten any earnings from the MLC. Shouldn't I be seeing royalties from them yet?
Shouldn't you be seeing royalties from the MLC yet? The
For my
answer,
$424 million?
well, yeah, right? Where's my check, right? I've actually been asked this question a couple of times in 2021 already. And the answer right now, as of this date at this moment, is no. You will not have seen any earnings from the MLC in your bank account yet, because they haven't started paying out. Now, I know some of you may think that sounds like a stupid question, but it's a genuine question. There's a lot of information out there floating around about the MLC. There's also a lot of misinformation floating around out there. So there are no stupid questions when it comes to this stuff. April, yes, thank you, Michelle, for popping into the chat. It is expected on April 15th. I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm not going to hold my breath, because things happen, and until I actually see something, I never assume. But I'm crossing my fingers that April 15th comes and I see statements and I see checks so I can pay my writers from the MLC. There are plenty of things you can do to be ready when the MLC does start paying out, and hopefully you are well on your way through this list of things. First is to make sure that your publisher is registered with the MLC. Not a stupid question to ask them. If they're all registered and everything's set up, it's really not a stupid question. And if you're a self-published writer, make sure you're set up as a writer and as a publisher in the MLC, and that those two things are connected so everybody knows that you are you. And let's see, what else on my little list here? Let me check. Next, make sure your songs are all registered with the MLC and that they're registered properly. Making sure to check for duplicate entries, making sure to check that all your metadata is right. Do you have your AKAs in place, that if that if there's an AKA that's really popular for your song, that you've got that listed in your metadata as well. And of course, my absolute favorite task that's going to happen for the MLC is the unmatched royalties queue. Definitely make sure you're checking it. Check it as often as you can. especially self-published writers. Definitely check that list. Yes, and something could end up on the unmatched list for a whole lot of different reasons. It could be a bad ISRC code. It could be a misspelled song title. It could be missing writer info. There could be lots of reasons why something ends up on an unmatched list from a DSP. But that's what the unmatched list is there for, and it gives you an opportunity to get your money out and in your own pocket and bank account.
And just to reiterate, as a songwriter, you're registering with the MLC as self-publishing as your publisher. And if you aren't self-publishing and have a publisher, then they are registering on your behalf.
And one of the great things about the MLC is if you are a writer with a publisher, you can go into the public database at the MLC and you can check your publisher's work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if anybody on this call is my writer, please go check my work. I want you to tell me if we screwed up.
Which is very
a mistake.
Very unlikely.
I'm not challenging you to find it. I'm just saying, if you find it, please tell me, because I want to know and I want to make it right. And every music publisher out there should have that mindset.
But whether you're self-publishing or a songwriter with a publisher, you always have to have your detective hat on all the time, because metadata is what's getting you paid. Mm-hmm. Period.
Exactly. I think we have one more scenario.
Scenario 6. Yes, let me see here. Mm-hmm. Bobo from Boston writes in, my original song, Super Spreader,
another catchy song,
has gone totally viral on YouTube.
I knew it would.
It's gotten 50 million views, and I've gotten a little bit of PRO money. Should I be getting more? My publisher hasn't gotten back to me with an answer.
Very interesting scenario, Bobo. Mm-hmm. This is a perfect question. As most of you guys know, YouTube is my usual hangout playground. So it's going to look kind of complicated. Bear with me. I know it's like flat metadata stuff, but there are two main income streams that you should receive as a songwriter when your song appears in a video on YouTube. First is the performance royalties, which YouTube pays to the PROs, and then the PROs pay the publisher and the writers directly. So that pipeline is very short. Second is the reproduction royalties, mechanical royalties. Now, there are a couple of different pipelines here for reproduction money from YouTube. Reproduction money from an art track, which is primarily used in YouTube music. It's the still image artwork of the video with the song playing behind it. So there's no actual motion of a video, it's a still image. That reproduction money is going to go from YouTube to the MLC to the publisher, who's going to pay the writers their reproduction share, right? And then there's also reproduction money for user-generated content on YouTube, the official music video, actual video uses on YouTube. And that money, very specifically, that money goes from YouTube to the publisher, and then the publisher is responsible for paying the writer's share of mechanicals to the writer. So it's another really short sort of thing. And this is money from ads that appear on YouTube videos. This is money from subscribers. People who subscribe to YouTube did not have ads, that subscriber money. That's the reproduction money flow.
For the video.
For views of videos, yes. So you should be seeing two income streams as a songwriter. Sometimes that's not always clear in the information that gets put out into the world. And certainly the rates need to be increased. I'm not, the rates, like, we're not even getting into like rate discussions and rate levels and things, but they definitely need to be higher and better. The PROs have a set rate. set forth by the consent decrees. Yay. Boo, consent decrees. Boo, 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 boo. I want to take my magnifying glass and hold it up to the sun and burn the consent decree. Yes, it's another use for this magnifying glass. But for the reproduction money, a lot of that money for video uses of your songs, that a lot of that is set in terms of whatever rate the advertiser is going to pay. So if you're like the highest rate I ever saw was when Adele, the day Adele premiered the James Bond theme on her YouTube channel, and that had a huge rate on it, almost $40 per thousand views. The flip side of that is, you know, somebody who does a cover on CD Baby and releases it on their YouTube channel might not even be at monetization level. So there aren't any ads appearing and therefore there isn't any money available. Or you
What
might,
can you define monetization level for everybody?
monetization level on YouTube is that not all channels monetize on YouTube anymore. And for a channel to monetize, it has to have 1,000 subscribers and a minimum of 4,000 watch hours per 12-month period, 4,000 watch hours per year. And it's not like a switch flips the moment you hit 4,000 hours. You got to sort of have that over a little bit of time consistently. So if you're an artist or a writer and you've noticed your YouTube channel, YouTube like turned off your monetization on your channel, again, a pipeline of income that's been stopped somewhere, that could be the reason why. Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent, Sherlock.
I'm like gonna use my magnifying glass and look at my notes here and make sure I got all of my
It's because Watson
complicated
interrupted
YouTube
you.
notes. Oh. If you are a self-published writer, how in the world do you get to that YouTube money? YouTube paying a publisher and then so that the writers can get paid. How do you get to that? Well, it comes via the publishing license agreement. YouTube will do licenses with music publishers, PLA, publisher, bleh. I can't talk anymore, Watson. Publishing license agreement.
Yes.
And if you don't have that agreement with YouTube, you can email YouTube to get one, see me after, and I can help you figure that out. Or you need to find a good third-party administrator who can do YouTube for you. If you're on like CD Baby Pro or TuneCore, things like that, those are third-party administrators that also do YouTube coverage for self-published writers as well as another company which shall remain nameless at this time. Yeah, so that's the basics of it. You've got to have that PLA agreement with YouTube to get your hands on that reproduction money from ads.
So that would be whether you're self-published or have a publisher, you'd want to make sure that your publisher has that agreement with YouTube. Otherwise,
correct. And not necessarily everyone does. Don't assume your publisher does. You have every right in the world to ask these questions.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
No shit.
People have been waiting all panel for that. So we're out of scenario questions, but I want to very quickly, Watson, if you will allow me, I want to walk through some of these clean up the pipeline or find the problem steps sort of all together.
Yeah.
That works for you. Cool.
Do you want me to read them or do you want to go over them?
You can read through them, Watson. I feel you've been underutilized in your vocal capabilities for this panel.
I thought me. I thought what I could do is maybe I could read the number and then you could do the letters. Huh?
Yes.
Right?
Cool.
Okay. So in review, important steps in metadata forensics, because honestly, everybody has to be a detective. No joke. It's no joke, Sherlock. Make sure you know the source that should be paying you for the use and the general route the money will take.
Absolutely. That's the first step in this problem. If you're worried about your money from Spotify, you need to know that you've got two income sources, your PRO and the MLC. So if your PRO is still paying, but you haven't seen your MLC money after April 15th, you haven't seen your MLC money, then you know you need to track what's going on in the MLC. If it's satellite radio, you know you only have one source, and that's your PRO.
But
So you
meaning
want
also non-interactive,
non-interactive streaming.
not on demand, as they say.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 2, work backwards to find why the income has slowed or stopped. That's part of being a detective.
That's where the detective, that's where you need your deer seeker or your bowler cap and your magnifying glass. That's where, if the money has not hit your bank account, then it's somewhere in the pipeline and you got to figure out where it is and when it's going to flow. Make sure your payment info is up to date at the source you're looking for. If you haven't registered with the MLC, get registered. If you've never put your songs into music reports, get them in there, because there's money for you there. For sure, there's something there, almost assuredly. Make sure your tax forms are up to date, your W-9s with all your sources, and make sure your address is up to date. We had a problem where a writer, they had an intern doing their accounting, and for some reason they didn't get any HFA checks. Well, it turns out that the poor guy they had interning and double checking things just made a simple human error mistake. And it was 2 quarters worth of Harry Fox money that didn't actually get paid through. When we found it, identified it, it was really easy. Oh my gosh, our bank account info got kerfuffled.
We should also remind people that we are only talking about the publisher songwriter side here. We know that there are avenues for performer income and master income and all that. We're only addressing one very specific angle here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just for anybody who might be late or
Yep.
or wondering like why we're not covering every single royalty source on the planet.
We would be here all afternoon.
Be here for 8 more hours.
And even our hats and magnifying glasses would not make it interesting in that point for anyone.
Shall I do
Our witty repartee would not cut it anymore at that level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next.
It would be a shitty repartee. Okay, check that the song is properly registered with the platform paying you.
Mm-hmm. If you can't figure out why the MLC is not paying you, or if you're a part of CD Baby Pro, I just noticed this sort of mention over here. Thank you again, Michelle. You were like my little super secret ally in the chat over here. These aggregators should be paying through as your publishing administrator. So if you're signed up with CD Baby Pro and you haven't seen anything on your statements from them for Spotify or for something like that, you should be knocking on their door, emailing them to be like, hey, I don't see Spotify on here, but I see everything else, that type of thing, because something could have gone wrong in their part of the pipeline. And you have every right to ask about that, no matter who it is.
I think number 4 kind of is similar, but resolve any problems with registrations at the platform.
Absolutely, yes. And actually, there were a couple of more letters I missed. In your proper registrations, is absolutely okay to ask, because the thing you got to remember, the bigger your publisher is, the more work they have to do, the more songs that they have to check, the more big amounts of metadata that are going back and forth between them and the platforms. Don't be worried or concerned that you're asking too many questions. Only be worried if you can't get answers. And registrations of songs at platforms are never set it and forget it. I don't know any publishing platform where you just go set up your stuff and then you just don't worry about it ever again. Don't do that. Set yourself some kind of schedule to go in and double check stuff. I've set this up with a couple of my writers where we picked a date and time on the calendar and we made it a regular recurring appointment for themselves to go check their own songwriter PRO shell to make sure that everything is still right, their registrations are still there. Hopefully it takes 5 minutes to log in and go check, check, check. Oh, my songs are there. That's what you hope for. But occasionally, just in case, you're checking to see if anything went stupid or sideways when you couldn't keep an eye on it.
Excellent observations.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we've kind of answered, or 5 and 6 are all.
Mm-hmm. Follow up with the source. If you haven't seen HFA income from a DSP, follow up for HFA. That's especially important for self-published songwriters.
Yeah. And
And
so
keep following up. Don't give up. Do not give up trying to get the answer to your question.
detectives don't give up.
Don't give up. Your question is important. You are the songwriter. You are the most important thing. Don't stop asking questions.
I think that's pretty much, I mean, our moral of the story is that it's very important to have a good relationship with your publisher and ensure that your works are registered properly.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
You know, not that even if you're your own publisher, have a good relationship with yourself. Be
yep.
on it, you know, whatnot.
Mm-hmm. So there's some questions in the Q&A. Mandy, if you never put your songs in music reports or HFA in 20 years, is it too late? No, it is never too late to get your songs registered. Never too late. I distributed my music through CD Baby Pro and realizing I need to get out of that and become self-administered, but you're feeling overwhelmed. That's a very common thing. You're not alone in that feeling. We get into a lot of really technical things, but for anybody that's got like a specific technical question that maybe need help with, I'm putting my email in the chat. So please feel free. And if I can help to answer some of these kinds of questions, please feel free to reach out. Oh, I put it in the all panelists instead of all panelists and attendees. That was really good. Hit me with it. No shit, Sherlock. Let's see. Were there any other questions here? I answered Anonymous's question. Or older shows, clarify previous question. Older shows that have previously aired on cable and major networks and are now streaming on Peacock, Hulu, etc. I would say that to be absolutely safe, you should double check or have your publisher double check the sync licenses. If you've got a lot of placements and a lot of shows, I know that can seem arduous to check them all, but if you say all of your publishing was at major publisher number 3 and they always did the same type of sync license to NBC and now the shows are airing on Peacock, then likely what's true for one of your licenses there would be true for all of them. But my understanding is that there should be PRO money for those, even though they're getting picked up by, say, Netflix or something like that. That's my understanding. And certainly if I'm wrong, somebody tell me. Because I like it. I like learning things as much as I like talking about things. I'm aware that much of this can be applied to collecting international royalties, but as an ASCAP writer, I've never been able to view cue sheets that are submitted to ASCAP via SOCAN. That is a really specific question. And Catherine?
I would just say that that's a question for ASCAP. If they're an ASCAP writer, then they should be able to get an answer from their ASCAP rep.
Definitely, yes. Yeah, and then a follow-up from Anonymous. How does one viewer obtain international cue sheets? you would have been, your sync license would have been done with someone at the production company. That contact hopefully is still available to get that. You can also require it in your license. I've done that before, required delivery of the cue sheet in my sync license. It doesn't make it come any faster, but it definitely helps when you're trying to squeeze it from the production company or the distributor of the film. And I think that's all the time. We're coming really close to the end. Are there any other questions that anybody's got? Our question queue is empty, Watson.
I'm looking in the chat area now.
Ah, yes. There's a question about a certain competitor to my company, and I'm going to play the thumper card and say that my mama taught me, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
Wait, where is this in?
In the chat. No, I know there are really good people over at SongTrust, and they do try, but there is a lot of reliance on your own effort as your own publisher when you're dealing with a company like SongTrust. So make sure you've done everything you possibly can with them before you start to ask them questions, because they're going to ask you those same questions again. So there's a lot of reliance on you doing a lot of your own work there.
But at the end of the day, you always need to have your detective hats on, period. Like the set it and forget it doesn't.
Set it and forget it never works.
No.
Never.
Not happening.
Yeah. I don't see any more questions right now. Thank all of you so much. This has been a whole lot of fun. I have really, really enjoyed this.
What great questions.
Oh, wait, I do see one, Mandy. I hope that you haven't left yet, but Mandy, can you register with Music Reports, the HFA, Tune Registry, everything, or do you need to get out of CD Baby first? I would, you need to sort of do that at the same time. You don't want things to sit for a long time where you self-register before you leave CD Baby, because they probably do have you registered at some of them. I would go ahead and get all my accounts set up and everything ready to go. And then I would begin to transition my assets over before, say, leaving CD Baby Pro. Get your foot in the door at these platforms first, and then transition the assets safely and soundly. Cool. Sarah, have we left anything out? Are we at the end?
I think you're golden. You guys did a lot of sleuthing today. Really got through a lot.
I'm gonna need a nap.
I'm ready for more.
Bring it on. Let's do this. Let's do this.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. And if you have any lingering questions, please email us at info@wearesona.com. We will either answer your question or put you in touch with somebody who can. We so appreciate everybody who came out for this full month of events. And thank you, Renee and Catherine, for doing an amazing job. An amazing job.
Yay.
Doing royalty forensics to cap it all off.
Absolutely. All right.
I guess we'll be signing off.
We're signing off. Bye, Sarah. Bye, Watson.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Toodaloo.